The Radio Misfits Podcast Network.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Planted with Sara Payan podcast. I'm Sara Payan, your host, and today, fresh out of Barcelona, I have the honor of having Alex Rogers, founder and CEO of the International Cannabis Business Conference and the Talman Group on the show. Alex, welcome. I got to say, I had so much fun with you in Barcelona, and thank you for having the podcast, and I'm super excited to do a little recap and then talk about.
Yeah, it was great seeing you in Barcelona, and yeah, it was an old hoot for sure.
Yeah, it was beautiful. It was just and it was a great way to kind of close out Barcelona because with Cannabis not coming back and it being the final ICBC there, onwards to even more exciting things.
Exactly. Everything has its time and chapter, and we're just blessed to have that time with Cannabis and that partnership, and yeah, just look back on all those memories so absolutely fondly.
Oh yeah, it was beautiful. I mean, I was telling somebody, because it was my first time in Barcelona, and
Uh-huh.
I was saying, how is it that you can feel a homecoming in a place that you've never been?
Well, especially if you're ahead too, because like you come to Barcelona. I mean, I lived in Amsterdam for a couple years when it was popping, when it was the thing, when it was like where every head wanted to go if they were gonna feel free or smoke weed or whatever, right?
Right.
And then I was also then I also witnessed how that whole thing kind of Amsterdam kind of fell off, right? They had governments that were kind of being prohibitive against coffee shops and and then Spain kind of took over, right? So the crazy thing is Amsterdam never really had that good a weed, right? They had good hash, but not good weed, right? For so long. And then Spain, they just took over the whole scene, and they Amsterdam had like their own Dutch culture coming from the Dutch scene, coming from all the old school growers and genetics guys. But Spain, the California boys came into Spain and really, I think there was a nice marriage there. And so when you go to a coffee shop in Spain or social club, the weed is banging. Like you got cats from Cali going out there being like, "Holy buckets, this is." Now it's kind of expensive or whatever, but when you're traveling, you don't care about that. They'll paying a few more bucks next. You just want the dank.
Yeah.
And the coffee shop or the social clubs in Spain have it. So it's an easy place to feel at home when you just feel like you're among your contemporaries, even though I'm in Barcelona, halfway across the world.
What are some of your favorite clubs in Barcelona?
Well, sadly to say, my time in Barcelona has mostly been spent working. I bring my family a lot of times, and we've had some great. They have a great time, and they go off. But my ass is just like I get on ground and I got to work. Now I do take my crew out sometimes, and for a dinner here and there. I'm not totally a Sandra D while I'm there, but HQ is my favorite coffee shop. I really like HQ. I've been to maybe only 10 different social clubs, right? But HQ is the one that I like the most. But I'm not the guy to ask which. I mean, HQ is dope. Don't get me wrong. I just don't have much. Unfortunately, I didn't go around. I've been into more Amsterdam coffee shops than I have in Spanish coffee shops. But I was just blown away by the herb. And then if you want to ask un gallo bilam, that dude knows like every single coffee shop in Barcelona because he's like a VIP guest at all of them. So.
That's true. Yeah, the day that I got in, we texted right away, and he's like, "Come meet me." So I had my first experience with him. That was he's a dear friend, so it was even better. I love that.
Yeah, he just rolls through Barcelona like a full weed rock star and shit, and he just eats it up. He's like a kid in a candy shop.
I know. Between that and the culinary delights that he like totally gets into, because we're both like total foodies, so we geek out on that stuff together. But let me dial it back a minute. What was your first cannabis experience
in my life?
in your life?
Wow. When I smoked weed or when I got high?
First
Or
time you
both.
first time you smoked weed and first time you got high.
Yeah, the first time I smoked weed, I was having a sleepover at my homie Colin McRae's house, and we were 12 years old. And it's back. It was a faraway time in land called the early '80s, and I did, and we smoked this little joint. He had like a roach. Somehow he got a hold of a roach, and so we smoked the roach. I didn't feel anything, and then I didn't really smoke until I was 13 again, when so my dad owned the neighborhood store. I grew up in a very nice neighborhood in Minneapolis called Kenwood. My dad owned the neighborhood store. Well, the convenience store there, Kenwood Market. And so I had started working there by myself since I was 12. I was a clerk there by myself because there was a law in Minnesota, at least, where, and I think it still exists, it's to some degree, like for farm kids and whatever, that if you're part of the family, you can work and you can get paid, right? So I started working by myself when I was 12, right? And so you'd go into the store and there's this 12-year-old kid managing the store, right? So it's just like, you don't see that type of stuff as much anymore, right?
Right.
You hardly saw it back then. But my dad was really good he taught me how to drive when I was 10. I was doing that when I was 12. I learned the metric system when I was like 8. My dad just pushed me into these things early, you know what I'm saying? Like a little man, right? So we were like little men when we were really young. And at 13, I had a shift at the store to work, and I went with Colin again and Peter Lage, and we smoked weed under a tree, and I got high, and I thought, man, this is the greatest thing of all time ever. And I went and I worked, and I just had the greatest time while I was working and laughing and making people laugh and being jovial and eating all my dad's Reese's peanut butter cups, basically. So that's my story. And I don't think anyone's ever asked me that, and I don't think I've ever told anyone that publicly.
Growing your cannabis business is exciting until it's not. Struggling with messy operations, supply chain chaos, or tough decisions? New Holland Group is here to help. They partner with founders and execs to untangle the hard stuff and scale with intention. Thinking about expanding globally? New Holland Group helps you think big while staying grounded in compliance, culture, and safety. Strategic expansion done with purpose, experience, and integrity. Visit new-holland.group to learn more. I love it. I love it. It's funny because it's like those of us who were kids in the 80s, I think we might have been people say that kids are more advanced now, but I think there was definitely like this precociousness, especially because we were kind of on our own a little bit more, you know?
Sure, for better or for worse, right?
Yeah.
And so in the end, it probably becomes for better, right? Because I don't feel like I wasn't nurtured by my parents enough,
Right.
you know? I just like they just didn't know where I was for like 8 hours of the day during the summer. It's like
Yeah, I
by the
mean,
time I was 7, by the time I was 8, I was taking the city bus downtown Minneapolis by myself. By the time I was 8, just get on the bus, go down. Might have even been no, I think I was 8. I was 8. No problem,
yeah.
see the bums, see see whatever, We didn't have many homeless back then in Minnesota because we were so fucking cold.
Yeah.
But I think that's changed now though. Uh, but yeah, no, we had a lot more freedoms back then, and right now it's like that's why I like where I live in Slovenia, right? Because I have a young daughter and she can go out. It's such a safe country that she can kind of live that little '80s life that we lived here. Not quite like we lived it. We were basically all feral children to some degree, and I just think helicopter parents are just the norm now. But yeah, that's why I like living in Slovenia and this wonderful country I live in, just because of that fact. That's one of the main reasons, how safe it is and chill.
Yeah, I can totally see that. I mean, I look now and I think like we used to play kickball in the streets, had to be home for dinner. Mom was like, get home before dark in the summer, and
Yeah,
it was fun because they knew we were going to be okay. There weren't the worries that we have now in the States.
Yeah, and sometimes the statistics say, "Oh, it wasn't any worse then. It is that," but that can't be true, can it?
I don't know.
Shit's crazy out there in this. I mean, it depends where you were in the city, and there was some gentrification of this, but overall, it just seems like everything's more crazy in America. I mean, yeah, for sure. I live small town America is even crazy, like on the West Coast with all the road dogs and shit now coming up and taking over the parks and shit. It's just like that's new. You always
Yeah.
had you always had your town vagrant or vagrants, right? But it was more of a novel thing. It was like Mayberry RFD up in that motherfucker and shit, right? And now it's like it's gone over. And so I'm fascinated in public policy, not just cannabis public policy, but just anything having to do with rules for society, because it's always about making the fewest rules for society to get the maximum results.
Yeah.
And so I'm always fascinated with how that happened, why that happened, how it could be alleviated, all the nuanced, holistic reasons why that's happening, and what then if you want to solve something, it certainly can't have a myopic or one-sided perspective on it. You have to have a comprehensive solution, and that's what we bring to the cannabis world. The same thing is how I've helped do work policy in all these different jurisdictions. Not to segue here, but basically California, Oregon, Germany, and now Slovenia. And I'd like to do my degrees in public political science, and I'm really interested in other public policies. But cannabis is a great way to it's a catharsis for me to help with cannabis policy, because it really delves into so many realms, whether it's health or whether it's the economy or whether it's the environment. It taps on all those what we would call hot button issues these days. So therefore, I've always been very outspoken about my cannabis use. One of the things is when I should qualify. I got diagnosed with ulcerative colitis when I was 13 and put on prednisone and zolfidine and all this crazy fucking Western drugs while I was going through like puberty, basically, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it kind of fucked me up, and I realized that cannabis was a way I could get off those drugs. So eventually, I healed myself. I didn't heal myself. Bruce Lee says, "Don't push the disease too far away. Don't have it encompass you. Live right next to the disease." So that's a great philosophy in life with all your everyone's issues or what that they deal with. Very Taoist. But so I use cannabis to heal myself. So and I don't even tell people that very, very often either, because I don't think I should have to. I think there's about a million other reasons why cannabis should be modernized. I'm tired of people talking about their personal testimonials for cannabis, because it's all big. That's all fine and dandy, but don't hang your whole entire hat up on that hook.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that that's so important because it's, that's only one facet of it. I mean, I got into cannabis. I mean, I've always liked it. And like you, I was a precocious kid. I had my first experience when I was 13. Didn't get high, asked for my money back. The dealer does not give you your money back, just so you know. But
Smoking weed either.
yeah, exactly. But I got into it after cancer. And before that, I was in civil rights. And I used to tell people I used to be a civil rights professional. And somebody said, "Hey, you still are." Because, doing the policy work that I do here in California, it really is about. I mean, when we look at cannabis and cannabis policy, it is all encompassing. It covers human rights, it covers civil rights, it comes rights to health care, rights of small businesses, rights to, the fact that not everything illegal is wrong, not everything legal is right. But how did you go from poli-sci to cannabis in the industry? Because you've been here a long time.
Yeah, I was on the 20-year plan when I graduated, right? So I flipped it. My whole thing is my sister went to Princeton and I went to prison, right? I come from a nice neighborhood. All my friends went to big schools. I was on the gifted classes, the smart classes, da 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 da. But I just freaked out. I just was like at 19, I just went to the West Coast and I was just like, I just had a different path, right? And so I met Jack Hare when I was 22 in Santa Cruz, California, and that's how my basically my cannabis career, if you will, even though he was an activist at the time. Even though I'd hustle his books and stuff, he'd give me books in exchange for going to get signatures, and then I'd go like to fucking Powell's Books. I even walked into in Portland once to sell some books, like 30 years ago, right? Almost. And just you could do that back then. You could just walk in and sell books, actually. So, and so Jack got me started, and that's how I, and then I moved out to Santa Cruz, and my girlfriend at the time was a junior transfer to Santa Cruz, and and then I went to Cabrillo College, as laughingly called Santa Cruz State, but and then I met Jack, and then I met Cypress Hill, that with Normal and Cypress Hill, and then I started working with Debbie Goldsberry and Dennis Perrone and Ed Rosenthal and Dale Geringer and Mickey Norris and Chris Conrad and Etienne Fontaine, and basically everybody. I was up in the mix. And so I was hardcore pre-215 activist in California, hardcore, up on Telegraph, up on Haight-Ashbury, legalized marijuana, getting signatures like a motherfucker. I was also producing hip hop shows with this little fake company I started and shit. And I also started a real political action committee that Jack actually put in his 1994 edition of The Emperor Wears No Clothes. So fast forward a little bit. Then I had a year, and then I just kind of fucked off, went back to Minneapolis, my parents moved out to Ashland, Oregon, and I just started kind of figuring myself out, and it was kind of like a funky little time. I made some little magic happen here and there, but eventually I moved to Europe, right? And then when I moved to Europe, that was when I really became a true fucking vagabond, right? People used to be like, Alex, you don't have any money, you don't have any job, how do you travel all around? It's like, it's because I don't have any money and I don't have a job, fool. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Well, a guy told me once when I was young, retire when you're young and work when you're old. And so that was easy for me to, I'm not into delayed gratification so much. So there I went. And of course, I come from a nice family. And I knew if the shit ever really did hit the fan, which it did many times, I still could get like $1,000 from my parents anytime. They're not going to let me fucking starve or whatever. So I had this, like I wasn't a hippie, but I had what they would call hippie privilege, right?
Mm-hmm.
I did my hippie thing, I was hippie tendencies, right? But I'm a city kid, right? So it was a little different way how I was going about the world, but there was parallels, right? And so so then I went to Europe, and I ran the cannabis. I worked on a ganja farm in Switzerland for a couple of years. People don't know weed was like basically legal in Switzerland 25 years ago.
Yeah.
And,
Ed was
and you could
talking
go
about
into
that.
stores, you could smoke weed on the train legally in Switzerland. No bullshit. 25, I had smoked enough spliffs on the train in Switzerland with the conductor coming by, asking for my ticket. And I'm just like, yo, here's my ticket, yo. Smoking joints, cats smoking joints next to me on the train in Switzerland. I mean, just fucking bananas, because it's so counterintuitive because we think of it as a conservative country. Those who know Switzerland know that there's a conservative element to
Mm-hmm.
Switzerland. Have to define what conservatism, but I mean kind of in a traditional social sense.
Right.
And so you wouldn't think that weed would be legal everywhere. But after I lived in Switzerland for a couple of years, and you realize it's not just all bankers. It's not all Geneva and Zurich. It's an agrarian society with these mountain people and shit, right?
Mm-hmm.
That speak funny in this mountain language, right? And the cowbells and so they're an agrarian society. They're really a hardcore agrarian society. A lot of farm to table shit going on in Switzerland. Let me tell you that right now. They have a lot of local stuff. They just put right to their local stores, restaurants, whatever. But so so I figured out Switzerland is they just look at anything that grows from the earth as a benign, as it can't be that bad, right? That's my theory, at least, why somehow they just didn't give a shit about weed. And they still don't care about personal use. And they've always been very great with harm prevention, with drug use and whatnot. But yeah, so I worked on a ganja farm, so planting big ganja fields, right? You got trimming, fucking planting, taking up roots, whatever I could do. And I didn't care. I was total vagabond. I didn't care. I All I wanted to do was be in Europe at that time because I wanted a different environment. I was still sick with my disease actually at that time. And I was like, I need to flip it. I need to find the spirit, my spirit of life, my direction, and I had the luxury of being able to, and I mean, it wasn't total luxury. Obviously, I took risk, and it wasn't always great not having a job or not having anything consistent, right?
Right.
And then I ran the Cannabis High Times Cup every year for 5 years. So I ran the Melkweg, the concert house for High Times for 5. So I worked in Switzerland. And then I went to language schools, right? And of course, I chased girls and had a lot of wonderful girlfriends. It was such a great time. I mean, especially for a crazy man like me, because if I was gonna settle down ever one day, I knew that I had to. Or if I was gonna kind of just stay in one place, I knew I had to just go experience the world, right? Basically confronting my fears, of I don't want to be a pussy. I want to be a good lover. I want to be a good provider, And I don't know, maybe I was none of those things at the time, but I figured out those are the three things that every 80s man, at least, old school 80s man, those are the most important things. And I think it's really important to if you really want those things, to be a good lover and a good provider and a good protector, then you got to confront some fears, because now if you want to try to at least get that trifecta going, then that's the warrior's life, right? And so then with all my intellectual pursuits of sorts, then you mix that on top of that with sports, and then I'm just living this crazy like Taoist monk, well, monk, not a monk as I said, but Taoist warrior, soul warrior, going
Yeah.
everywhere by myself. Like if I had beef with people, or it got crazy on the streets, I wouldn't bring my crew in. I would handle that shit myself, right? I wouldn't want to bring my crew in. I really put myself in a lot of risky situations over my life. But that was part of confronting those fears. Am I a warrior, or am I just talking? And of course, I'm still not the greatest warrior. There's always levels to this, right? But now I'm almost 54, and I feel like I'm a man, right? But when I was 30, I wasn't a man, and a lot of kids do become men by then, right? I was just a late bloomer, so I'm old school, I'm traditionalist, but I'm also very postmodernist, obviously.
Emerald Village, West Hollywood, the heart of cannabis culture in Los Angeles. From the first legalized dispensaries to the nation's first cannabis cafe, WeHo leads the way. Visit legacy spots like AHHS, LAPCG, and MedMen. The fresh vibes at Calma, Urban Leaf, and Green Queen. Chill at lounges like The Artistry, OG Cannabis Cafe, Off the Charts, Pleasure Med, and The Woods. Emerald Village WeHo, the world's 5-star cannabis destination. Your elevated escape awaits.
So it's a funny mix.
Well, I think for a lot of people, I mean, you sound a lot like my husband, Jeff, because he was a touring musician for years and years, and nothing could tie him down. But, when we got together, it was like, I've lived a crazy ass life. I've done all the things I want to do. I know that when I look at you, this is what I want. I'm not missing out on anything. I've done it. And now let's do stuff together. And it's like, yeah.
That's how when I met my wife, it was just like, if you ever see Moonraker, when Jaws met the little blonde girl, James Bond's evil enemy, and that was the one time we saw Jaws get all Twitter-pated, and I just feel like there's an eventual time where a man, and I was young. I didn't think I thought I was gonna be even older. So I met my wife when I was 32, right? So to me, that's young, actually.
Yeah.
That's what I thought. I thought, I'd be 40 or whatever. I was 40 until we had our daughter. But thank God, thank God, thank God for all that. And the whole time I've just been, in Europe, this is what happened. And this is how eventually I got to graduate from university in political science, is that I went down in Europe, right? So I spent 6 months in German and Austrian prisons, right?
Oh, whoa.
For weed, right? And I was living in Slovenia at that time, and I thought I was never gonna leave. I was a musician, or I was a singer in Slovenia. I had a bunch of bands I was in, and it was fucking fun. I was broke as shit. I had super hot girlfriend, my wife, And I was living in this little beautiful apartment under this mountain that I could climb or bike up every day, right? My life was perfect, right? And I had stopped selling herb too. I was like, fuck it, I'm getting my shit together. I got my queen, I got my little Slovenia, my favorite place. I'm good. I'm singing in all these bands, rapping in one, singing in another, doing dance hall in a DJ sound system in another. It was just great. And then, well, bam, I went down for some shit I had done like a couple years previous, right? And that's what changed my life. My life was changing. My wife was changing my life right then, and I was, because instead of just marauding the earth, now I was settling down and becoming slightly domesticated, and I was okay with that. Um, but then I went down, and so when I went down, when I got out, I was like, man, I got to go back to America. I got to get my shit together. This. There was some serious soul searching, and when you do 6 months, 23-hour lockdown, right?
Yeah.
And that's not even that long a time compared to some of these cats out there. So I'm not saying it was like that. It was stressful as fuck. Don't get me wrong, but it's it was still only 6 months. So it was like Jaja was like, look, brother, I'm gonna tap you on the ass right here and be like, you're gonna wake up or not. And so I fucking woke up. I was like, this aggression won't stand. I gotta be a human. I got to start building and preserving shit, not destroying and being destructive. And that's what I did. So a year and a half later, I come out of prison. I lived in my parents' basement. Me and my wife, was a nice basement, but they supported me for the next like 2-3 years. And I went to school. I got this grant because I was 20. I was 34, 5 years old. I didn't pop the piss in, so that qualified me for all free school plus a little extra, and my books plus a little extra money. Oh, my mom was so happy I did that. Then I graduated magna cum laude from political science. I was on the dean's list a bunch of times. My mom is highly educated, doctor of developmental psychology, master's of political science. My dad's a master's of physics. My sister went to Princeton, famous child actress. Opera singer, all this shit, right? So I was like, and so that's my pedigree, if you will. And I was like, and my parents came from like rural nothing, right? So that's like the American dream. They educated themselves and worked their ass off to get we didn't come with no family money, right?
Right.
And so now I got, what am I gonna do? Fuck all this off but men, we don't see this shit. Young boys, we don't see this. Men see it, boys don't. So I didn't see, and then all of a sudden, boom, I wake up, boom, I'm magna cum laude, boom, mom, the dean's list at 35, going home to my mom, being like, look, showing her my report card, I mean, retarded in one way, poetic and cute in another. I don't know, but
no matter what, it's still your mom. You still want her to be proud of you,
Fuck yeah, I did. So then I knew I had to do all this other shit. Now I said, well, now I got to get a job. So I got a job. Someone gave me a salary. It was $1,500 a month. It was nothing. My mom was so proud I got this job as an activist. And then the biggest medical marijuana clinics in Oregon. And I was the first person to advertise medical cannabis on network TV in America. And I just absolutely crushed it. Started helping all these people. People try to get their kids away from this shit. Should be like, nah, here's your car. Retroact, got the dope doctors doing, you know what I'm saying? That would, just making it all happen, right? But doing it under the auspices of, by far, we were the most professional clinic in the state of Oregon, right? Fucking come in, water features, hella good service. Before then, it was like hippies running that shit, right, in Oregon. It was dread, actually. It took me 10 hours. My appointment, 10 hours. I had to wait for my first car because it was like traveling dread hippie clinic and shit, right? With some fly-by-night doc, whatever, right? So I was like, oh, I can do this better. So I crushed it. And then and that's when my parents were like, okay, because I had to do that. I had to get if you don't get to the level of your parents in life, then there's, you could have some guilt or some feelings about that.
Totally.
Right. So I got my education. Then I became one of the top businessmen in the community. And that, my dear, is how the whole thing basically happened after I got back from Europe and graduated from college.
And then ICBC. You decided to go back into international.
So then they legalized dispensaries in Oregon, because when I started the medical, they didn't have the dispensaries. You got through a grower,
right?
Right. And it was a dope system because it was just like wink, wink, nod, nod, and everything was chunky. Some cats were getting like 10 G's for their cars for the grower, or 5 units or whatever, or 6 units or 10 units. It was nuts back in like 210. It was just like banging. 211. It was just like the underground was popping, right? And it worked, and everybody had mad money. You know, the Humboldt 20s coming up, going around everywhere, right? And it was real nice. And then they went and did dispensaries, and then eventually legalization, which was the beginning of the end of that wonderful Wild Wild West boom and boon. That people started asking me questions. So I was seeing at my height 6,000 patients a year at my clinic, right? So it was no joke, a big phenomenon. And in a town of 20,000 people, right, Ashland. And so cats started asking me questions then when it started becoming well, I had been around so long. I had seen every single weed conference, and then MJ Biz had just started, and I was like, oh, I'm going to do Oregon Marijuana Business Conference. And so we did it, and we blew it up. We biggest in the state. It was bananas. And then shortly after that, like in 2014 or 2014, it was the first ICBC in Oregon. And so I was like, I'm going back to Germany. I'm going to legalize weed. I'm going to be an anständiger Mensch, as they say, like an upstanding dude. And I'm going to go back there and I'm going to crush it. So I built the foundation, the clinic. Then I built the biggest B2B event in Oregon. And then I was like, okay, with this, now I'm going to go to Europe. But before I went to Europe, I knew I had to build my shit in America where my strength was first. And so I started in Portland. That was a pretty cool event. I'm one of the first people, or the first, that would bring famous people to speak that weren't necessarily heads, but were.
Yeah.
And were stoked to come, and then come out of the proverbial closet at the event a little bit, and or have it at least be tacit. And so then we did San Francisco, right? And then I think it was 2017 when we went to Vancouver, and that was our first, international, right? If you're Pacific Northwest, that's not so international. But then no, 2016 it was, and then 2017 is when we went to Berlin. And I always knew that that's the one. So I started building all this stuff. We were in Hawaii and San Francisco and Vancouver and Portland, just so I could take that brand and move it to Europe, just so I could go to Europe and say, hey, I'm a little bit of American hotshot, right? Just a little, and use that momentum to then build what I actually wanted to build, which is I wanted to be the king of Europe. I wanted to place myself in the center of everything, and I wanted to create the most irie civil policy based on civil liberties. And so the first thing I said at in human rights and individual liberty, the first thing I said at the ICBC Berlin in 2017 when we did it, and everyone thought I was fucking crazy when I came off, because I'm the first person to bring B2B to Europe. I'm the first person to have a cannabis conference say, oh, it's $500, and we're gonna, every time it was $20. It was we say consumer shows, right? Mm-hmm. Like Cannabis and stuff, which are great, but this is different. This is a different animal, right? And so the first thing I said was, look, Germany, the most important thing for Germany to do is to allow for a home grow and to end criminal penalties for cannabis. And they've done that now. And so the ICBC Berlin likely had a big part to expedite this public policy. Certainly the industry, but the two kind of go hand in hand. So 2017 was the first year that from all my stuff in Oregon, then Berlin, and it took off. And then I knew eventually I only wanted to do Berlin, right? I knew that's the one that was going to scale, and I knew that if I didn't have the bandwidth or the wherewithal or the acumen to say, oh, I'm going to be really having one in every country. No, I built it having one in six different countries. We've been 7 countries we've done them in, right? Mm-hmm. But my goal was now to come back to Berlin and have everybody come to Berlin. So now I didn't have to go everywhere anymore. Everybody comes to Berlin. And lo and behold, after a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, baby little miracles happen.
Yeah. Yeah. And now, even beyond the ICBC, you've got Talman Group. And you're fostering businesses and talent and investment and connecting the dots for a lot of people. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Sure. I mean, we started a global investment forum years ago, and it was really shit model, and I just couldn't figure it out. And I just had this idea that I have the biggest B2B network in Europe, so I kind of want to skim the cream from the top of that. I already professionalized the industry to the next level. Now I want to take it to the next level.
Mm.
And I tried for a few years and didn't work. And then I changed the model up, and I made it a private investors group, an executives group. And because we had deal flow, people give us their deck, can you raise this money? It's like, yeah, well, I didn't really know the investors. I didn't really know. And so I tried to cultivate that, and it wasn't great. And all of a sudden, Sarah, I flipped it, and I said, we're going to make it all private and exclusive now. But we're going to curate it in a more direct way, and a more thoughtful and comprehensive way, like the not only the business model itself, but the events also.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm going to go out to my group, and I'm going to say, you got to be part of this event. And once I get all my people in, then everyone else, then it's going to start to snowball. And so the idea was to just create a private investors and executive club where two things would happen. We would fund companies, and we'd have the best companies, and we'd help push the industry forward. And we would also it would also be like the top networking place to make crazy partnerships. And this is something that everyone says they want to do. Everybody wants to be a player, but nobody wants to be a player. So everybody says they want to have their club, they're going to have their exclusive whatever, right? Well, that's not easy. And so I was just in a good position to do it. I had suffered a lot, so much so that necessity became the mother of invention in terms of this business model. I just had to figure it out. And then the timing, luck was good also in terms of the investor sentiment in Europe right now is coming back on big time for a lot of different reasons. So now we've been in Munich, we've been in Zurich, we're at the Hotel Adlon the day before the ICBC, April 28th. We've got Slovenia coming up September 5th. We got London at the Savoy, November 7th. This is the first time I've announced that publicly also, actually, with Slovenia. And we have a policy event in Brussels, and we're doing a party at the Slovenian embassy the night before the Brussels event. Because what we're doing in Slovenia is we're about to, it could get really stupid up in here, because I've been doing all this Jedi Ninja shit for 3 years, and since I hit the ground here in Slovenia, and so we're just doing some wonderful. It's like my pet project. After all, I'm just some wonderful activism work, because what I saw, Sarah, is I saw Germany basically legalize de facto, right? The European Union does not allow for the European countries to legalize weed per se, right? Mm-hmm. They have punitive measures that they can apply if each individual respective countries don't adhere to their said. So what happened is Germany products list. Now, this can't be understated how important this is. Like, and all the things I predicted and I pushed in Germany, some of the shit I didn't predict. Some of the shit I was like, wow, this is pretty willy-nilly for Germany. Like, holy Jesus, right? Like, I didn't think they were going to be so, but they did. And they took cannabis off. And when the willy-nilly stuff's more like the social clubs and stuff. I think taking cannabis off the narcotics list is not willy-nilly. That just makes pure common sense. But what's what they did. So now, and this is very controversial, because now it's like, if you want to go to Germany, you can call on the phone. Let's say if you're in at least a major city, and you can have your herb in like a couple of hours, and in some cases, you don't even have to actually see a doctor, not even telemedicine, right? That's how buck wild it is on one side of things, right? And so as me as an activist, and me as a political scientist, and me as being Euro savvy, I'm looking what translates, what's analogous, what public policy has worked in America that we know is good, what public policy works here. And I didn't think it was going to be quite as analogous as it actually is. And the fact is a robust medical system We can just look at California for an example. There's a lot of people who wish those days were back.
Same.
You know?
Yep. Me. I do.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, because we saw what happened. And the irony is that the medical was underregulated and the rec was overregulated, right? But that's kind of what's happening in Europe, and because now it's off the narcotics list, right? So it doesn't need as much regulation. So the doctors don't feel that they're under as much scrutiny to prescribe it. It's off the narcotics list, right? It's not a Betäubungsmittel, as they say in German, right? And I believe me, I know that. I saw it in my discovery a million times when I'm reading my shit, right? It's gone. It's gone. And so that's the best thing Europe can do in terms of public policy. Any country can do. They can do medical marijuana and take it off the narcotics list. And lo and behold, you have a safe access system for everyone. And guess what? It's even better because in Europe, these motherfuckers are crazy about taking your drivers. In Germany, if you get caught with weed, not now, but when it was legal, if you got caught, you could get your driver's license away if you were just standing on the corner smoking a joint, right? You were nowhere near your car.
Wow.
Right? And otherwise, most European countries, they'll take away your license if you get caught smoking weed, but they'll actually, like, this shit happens, right? I know it happens in America too. It doesn't happen as much like in the medical marijuana. Cops know that you can drive fucking stoned, you know? Well, you can't drive stoned actually. You just drive if you're a smoker, everyday smoker, you can drive. If you don't smoke very often, you probably shouldn't get in. Let me not mislabel or use misnomers.
Blimburn Seeds has been a trusted name in cannabis genetics since 2002. With roots in the US and Europe, they offer premium seeds, clones, THCA flower, pre-rolls, and professional nutrients. Shipped fast, secure, and guaranteed worldwide. Explore over 1,000 strains in curated packs designed to help you grow with confidence and pride. Catch our 3-part series featuring a live interview from Barcelona with founder and CEO Sergio Martinez, only on Planted with Sara Payan. Do you think, so this past year I had Rick Steves on the show, and he talks about, because he's done all of his books and videos on travel, and the thing that he talked about with cannabis legalization was he appreciated the way Europe looks at pragmatic harm reduction. Do you think that really influences a lot of the policy that we're going to be starting to see? Great question.
Obviously, to get things off the black market and to have safe access is always something, a point to put to the forefront. But no, they're not. But that's the quick, dirty answer, because it is in terms of this. With the recreational bill, like when you just say, "Oh, we're going to decriminalize," then that has the harm reduction aspect to it, right?
Right.
To decriminalize, but it's so decriminalized so many places already, where they have like good harm reduction strategies. Does that then translate into them making laws for a commercial market? I don't quite see it. I only see it into just for a decrim thing. So Germany did decrim, right? And that was part of that obviously is part of a harm reduction strategy, an anti-prohibitionist strategy also, kind of the same thing, or they're tangential. Yeah, such a good question. No, I don't. No, because it's prevalent, the harm reduction strategy. I mean, you got heroin addicts all over Europe and shit, right? Well, junkies all in the streets. That's Europe's, or traditionally that's been Europe's big problem. Now they have other problems, but in terms of violence on the streets, because I've been here for 25 years, so I've really seen it, a lot of change. But one thing that's been true is you're going to have that Euro junkie everywhere you go, all right? And the cops aren't throwing them in jail. Now you see it in America too. You didn't in America for a while. See all the it was isolated, or there was certain areas or whatever. But in Europe, that's what they do. Every country has their certain areas where the junkies hang out, but that doesn't translate to the commercial market. In fact, there's such a huge difference between looking at harm reduction and looking at a commercial market with cannabis, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can't really talk about the commercial market. So maybe it has a place because that's how the strategy and tactics the activists come up with, and lobbyists or whatever, if you will, what they use to make cannabis legal or to change policy is definitely on that tip. But it's mostly but it's not, you have to hush with the commercialization aspect of all this. Because in Europe, it's like, how dare you make money? It's a total different mentality. Like here in America, it's like, of course we're going to make money, and how do we make money, and how are we going to make money? But there it's like, everybody knows there's going to be money to be made, but that conversation is not out in the open.
How do you foster the conversation?
It just, I mean, that's the cool thing, because, so maybe Rick is right, because there's not a lot of, until you would legalize cannabis, right, which Europe can't do, there's not a ton of money there for the government per se in terms of taxes, right? The money gets more stupid when you can tax for recreational purposes. So there's just the left in Europe is just so pro legalizing cannabis, drugs maybe in some ways, right?
Right.
But they're just so into it that if you say, and what they're into is medical, right? I can't stress this enough. Europe, if you talk recreational in Europe, the conversation, you can have that conversation now in Europe. You can actually have that conversation now in Europe, a real conversation. But if you want to change public policy in a country as soon as possible, the best way is under medical. Right. And so that's that you pull those compassion strings, and you pull those basically, oh, well, it's medical. Even though they know it might be commercialized to some degree, they know it's medical. And I just think that there's an actual compassion element in this whole thing. And I'm trying to be a little more nuanced and figure out what is making everything tick. But, I guess it would be this. The voters now have come to medical marijuana hardcore. So in Slovenia, they had a referendum, and it was 67% for medical, and it was 52% for legalization or decrim, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's probably the main issue why people are for it right now, and why even the left is for it. Because I'd like to give people the benefit of the doubt and say compassion is one thing. And of course, some people are compassionate and actually give a fuck, but the majority probably don't. Politicians and administrators, and so that's what was I saying now? Now I lost I now I had my one point why it is, and because the voters, yeah. So that's what they're pandering to their base,
right?
Right. So that it comes back. It basically, it all comes down to that, and I don't think they are harm reduction, but it's a separate conversation between harm reduction strategy and commercialization of a new commodity or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I totally see that, because it's, they're kind of, there's business and there's the social aspect, and those two don't overlap maybe as much as they should, or as much as we'd like. And when we're looking at I've been doing policy in California now for a decade, and I'm the vice chair of the state cannabis advisory committee. And one of the things that frustrates the shit out of me is the fact that the cost to entry is so high, and the state has taxed everything to the nth degree, and then they're like, we're not getting the taxes that we were expecting what happened. And then they're like, oh, and then we have to spend all this money on enforcement, which we thought was going to go away during legalization, which was really by
Yeah.
their own doing because they've just fostered a very rich illicit market by making it hard for people to participate and making
Right.
it inconvenient for people to purchase from the legal market because it's so expensive.
Right.
Do you think, I mean, and I just look at it as the longer I'm in policy, the more I realize that common sense goes out the window when cannabis comes into the picture with this, and maybe it's with a lot of other things too, but this is the realm that I'm in. Do you think other places can learn from our mistakes, or do you think that we're going to be third verse same as the first in Europe on this?
Yeah, I think they can. No, I think mistakes are being learned from. Actually, I think the European, some of them are, they're more savvy than we think.
Mm-hmm.
And I also think, but cannabis is still the redheaded stepchild. So, like, there's one instance where we're saying, okay, it's going to be off the narcotics list, but then an agency still wants something that no other narcotic lists. And it's like, why do it?
Yeah.
So you do see that, and but ultimately, no, because now the cannabis world in general, cannabis is just more accepted around the world in general, right? This is why Gavin Newsom could be like the cannabis god until he wasn't, until he became governor and he didn't do shit, right?
Right.
But when he was in the mayor of San Francisco, right, or lieutenant governor, he could spout off all about it he wanted, right? And because he had that luxury, because we're talking about that voter constituents. Then when he became the governor of the state, then it was like, oh, you didn't do shit. I talked to the California Control Agency. I don't think he'd even contacted them a year into his tenure. So, so in Europe, like Germany is just such a great example because the thing is it's not state by state. They done federally legalized or that shit, under certain auspices, right? This is uniform federal law. It's off the narcotics list, right? So there is federally, these federal laws, and now it's off the narcotics list. There is no redheaded stepchild. Okay. In fact, now it's the opposite. So that's the key to Europe policy. Europe is a patchwork. You see all these countries, and Europe's so bureaucratic, and politics are such bullshit. It's so technocratic, right? And I think it's garbage because you still have a caste system. America, we have a class system, but at least it means you can move through that system. You do have option to move through a system that's based on class, but a system that's based on caste, it's more, you can't be as, it's not as transient, right? You can't, or that's not the right word. You just don't have the mobility, right? The social mobility, right? So the political class in Europe are just, and it's just insufferable, right? And as an American, is who we believe we don't look at each, okay, so there's some asshole Americans, don't get me wrong, who definitely want to strata people, my mom once said the same person that would look down on someone is the same person that would deify someone, maybe not, for not all the right reasons. So,
Right.
So now in Europe, you have a caste system. So when you deal with now it's not a real caste. It's not like an Indian caste system, right? But it is old world. It is tribal, and your last name and what your parents do matters in Europe a lot more than it does in America. That's just cold hard fact. So now the politicians think, oh, now I'm a politician. They think there's something special, right? And it's like, then the conversation becomes, how can you just spill the water so you can fucking clean it up and look important? And because they're all feckless, they might be okay. They might have had or done something okay in their life, right? But once they hit that political realm, it's the good life in Europe, because now you've hit this, you're the political, not class, you're the political caste, right? And so now you're just highfalutin. And so it's really hard in these countries to get shit done because there's so much regulation in Europe also, that now everything has to go be opaque and done surreptitiously, in terms of governance, in terms of just how you're paying your taxes or who's paying you or whatever, right? So now you have this wink, wink, nod, nod, known secret type thing, which I actually love. Don't get me wrong. So I'm actually not complaining. I'm just trying to explain the situation. I will complain about snobby politicians, right? But at the same time, they're still maybe in some ways more harmless than like an American policy, right? They still, as much as they take themselves so seriously, it's so fucking interesting, right? I just can't, I'm definitely kind of just going off here a little bit because it is hard to explain the differences. But bottom line is, all these countries are different. There's tons of bureaucracy within all these countries. It's hard to just say, you know what, we've learned this, this is what we need to do. And it's, to tell you the truth, that's what I'm doing or attempting to do down here in Slovenia, and we'll see what happens. But I think it could start a big spark throughout Europe, what I'm doing, because
that's what I wanted to ask you about. I wanted to ask you about your work in public policy in Slovenia.
Yeah, so Germany's did what they did. We decided to do what Germany did under the medical. We're not doing social clubs or pilot projects within this bill. It's just medical and off the narcotics list, right? With just like Germany, even a few little better things in terms of like edibles and all that stuff we learned from them, right? And so now I think everyone says, is everyone going to follow Germany? Well, if I hadn't come to Slovenia, this shit wouldn't probably be happening right now, right? Just to that's everyone knows that shit too here, right? So it's like and I'm not saying, if I hadn't come to Slovenia, I'm saying nobody's going to follow Germany's model because it's going to take time, years, because every country's so fucked up. So I figure if we can make a small, robust, respected country in the EU do exactly what Germany did, I think that now will show people this is the model, actually. And then pop, they'll start to fall. So Germany started the way, and then now I'm trying to do this Jedi ninja shit in Slovenia that will hopefully resonate throughout the continent, and we're gonna see.
Are you looking for a lasting, meaningful way to connect with your audience and highlight your brand? Well, listen up, because Planted with Sara Payan is taking on new sponsors. Here's a powerful stat. 20% of listeners are more likely to support brands they hear about on a trusted podcast. And 60% actually look up that product after hearing about it. That's the power of podcasting. Planted with Sara Payan has a unique draw. With remarkable guests, we attract and engage audience that spans all sides of the cannabis spectrum. Picture your message reaching these listeners time and again. Podcast ads are evergreen, meaning your brand stays relevant as new audiences discover and binge past episodes. It's a long-term investment that keeps on giving. If you're looking for a targeted, passionate audience with lasting impact, the right listeners are here waiting to meet your brand. Visit plantedwithsara.com to get a copy of our sponsorship deck today.
That's exciting. That's just so exciting.
It's very exciting, and it's fun, and it's different. I've worked with a lot of politicians. I don't like working with politicians. I don't like working with governments. But in Slovenia, it's only 2 million people. I think it's the greatest country in the world. For me, it's the best place I've ever been to. And it's like a magical, like Hansel and Gretel meets some Harry Potter shit. You know what I'm saying? It's like Hogwarts every day up in this motherfucker and shit. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. It's like clean. It's like mountains. There's only 3 countries with the mountains and the Mediterranean Sea: Italy, France, and Slovenia. Think about that. People are mind. That's just the fun fact of the day right there for everybody, right? There's only 3 countries with the Alps, the Mediterranean Sea: France and Italy, and Slovenia. And so it's got Loven Ija. That's how you spell it. Loven Ija. And so it is. It's like the most. And it could be the most cannabis-friendly country in Europe too. Just so you know, I could smoke weed everywhere around this town. You can smoke indoors a lot of places too. You can shut restaurants down. All the way, everybody smokes in this country, and if they don't care at all. It's the most it's so weed friendly. It's small, right? Mm-hmm. But it's weed friendly everywhere. Smoking everywhere. Bars everywhere. You can smoke everywhere. And I'm not being hyperbolic. I'm just straight up telling you that Slovenia They don't give a fuck. They love weed. And you get the best weed for the cheapest price on the black market in Slovenia, all over Europe, right? So good chronics cost you maybe like $6 a gram on the underground. And for
Wow.
Europe, that's a good price.
Yeah, well, for anywhere, that's a pretty good price.
Yeah, yeah,
You know.
yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah. So, and you can get the domaca here, which is the outdoor grown. It's because everybody grows. That's why it's so cheap. Everybody's got their grow here, and so it's fucking everywhere. They used to import it all in from Albania, but that was the swag, like our Mexican swag, right? It was a very similar analogy. And so, which you didn't really know about in maybe Southern California, you got some of the Pretendica or the kind of or whatever. But I'm from Minnesota. We got the brick, right?
Oh, I'm from Michigan, so I cleaned up some of
You
that
from
brick.
Michigan? Oh,
Yeah, I'm
shit.
from the UP,
Right.
so right on Lake
Oh, that's
Superior.
right. You're
Yeah,
from the UP. Fuck, how could I forget? Oh my God, that's amazing. So you know how it is,
I
right?
do, yeah.
That's, and so basically that's what happened in Europe in the 90s. The homegrown started. All you had was shitty hash in Europe up until the 90s. And then in the 90s, the homegrown scene started hard. And now everybody had skunk. So now Europe's so traumatized in terms of like market metrics or whatever, or preferences. I don't think Europe will always be so long. They will love flower, not edibles, not hash, flower, because they're so traumatized for smoking shitty Moroccan hash for so long that like that hard Moroccan hash was everywhere in Europe, right? And then they get some fucking kind bud, right? And who would want to smoke the shitty Moroccan hash? Now we have better hashes and dabs and better Moroccan hash, all that shit.
Totally.
But they're just stuck on the flower here. And that's why everybody's getting all over Europe. The homegrown scene is it's just blew up starting 30 years ago.
Well, once you've had good flower, I mean, it changes your world. And when I moved to California and I finally knew what good weed was, that blew my mind. I mean, even the stuff that we would score in Golden Gate Park was way better than anything that I had to sift through in Michigan.
That's crazy you say that. We get a little twomp on the street, right? And then it's what we call a little 20 bag, twompers. Get a dime bag and a twomp. And so you get a little twomp on the street, and that's like a full gram, almost a full gram. But because remember back in the 90s, weed was $400, $350 an ounce. The Humboldt outdoor was $350 an ounce. It was $4,800, $4,500, maybe good super bro deal. You could get them like for 38 back in 94 or whatever, right? And weed was so prohibitively expensive, right? But you could go on the street, get yourself a dime bag. So I used to work down on Lower Haight at the Hemporium, right? You know? And then they'd send me out on the street, you know? They'd be like, all right, go get some, Alex. I'd be like, all right, let's go. So, and that was the hood back then because the Fillmore projects were there back in the day. They're not there anymore, right?
No.
So I just dip a block or so and get into the PJs a little bit and just hit the corner and boom, 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 boom. And it was crazy because California, like the corner dealer, it wasn't a ripoff. It was like 0.8 grams for 20, and you knew it was, but it was good.
Yeah, you knew it was good. I mean, I dropped into the Haight in '96, and it was, you know, and then I was working there, and I just remember like just being blown away by that, and also just being blown away by the fact that you could smell it in the street. Nobody cared.
Yeah, nobody cared in the 90s, man, in California. You could smoke inside at the concerts and everything.
Yeah, nobody cared. I mean, that's when they started cracking down on cigarette smoking, but they didn't care if you smoked joints.
Yeah, right.
You know?
Exactly. California.
I know. It's changed so much. Like when I started,
you had to love it. The 90s in California was magical.
It was so magical. There was so many good parties, so much art, just everything. It was
exactly.
Bring it back. Bring it
all
back.
Those subcultures living in harmony together and doing their own respective awesome thing. It was just a mosaic of awesomeness.
Yeah, it really, really was. I get really nostalgic because that's what brought me here. Like I came to visit for a couple of weeks and I fell in love and I was like, get me out of Michigan. This is my home, you know?
Yeah.
And when I started in the industry, well, and it was the movement then because it was the 215 days, you know, farmers were making a decent living. It wasn't It was less a pound then. It was like 3,500 a pound.
Yeah, it went down to 35 around then. Yeah.
Yeah. But when we look at the future, what are things that you're excited and hopeful about?
Well, I mean, look, my pulse is on Europe, right? I'm all about Europe, right? 100%. My whole mission is to legalize weed on the continent of Europe. So what I'm the most excited about is, I mean, honestly, if you really want to know, obviously there's all that, okay, legalize and da 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 da. But if we think about like, so I'm a hardcore anti-globalist, anarchist, libertarian, right? I'm not a globalist. I'm anti-globalism, 100%. We were sold a bad deal on that one. If they were sold Star Trek and shit, and we got fucking Huxley, right? So it's not good to have that much centralized power that's unaccountable to folks, right? And I'm speaking of the EU especially, but I'm not. So I believe in saving the world. I believe it will never be the spawning and all this, and it's really bad in America how polarized. Oh, climate change. No, you don't believe it. Oh, you believe it. Blah, 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 blah. None of that fucking shit matters. What matters is that the petrochemical industrial complex is fully intact, and none of this shit they talk about climate change or whatever actually goes to the root of the problem. So what I'm excited about is actually really cleaning up the air and really cleaning up the water. And globalism won't do that. Globalism will create a dirty monoculture, a dirty everything earth. Marx said that I'm not a Marxist, but he did have an interesting thing saying the society will take on also the mode of production. So whatever the mode of production is industry-wise or for your economy, that's the society will take that on too. So now societies, so if you have an egalitarian workforce, you have an egalitarian society, for example, right? This was maybe what he was trying to say. But also anything is true in that regard. So if you have, because we don't live in a capitalist society, right? People say, oh, capitalism doesn't work. We're not in a capitalist society, right? We're in basically a fascist society with agency capture and consolidation. So what and this is just, I don't care what side of the aisle you're on politically or whatever. These are just facts that most people can say, okay, those are basic truths, you know? So the question becomes, how do you change? How do you abruptly change? Do you quietly change? And buying trees in India, right? Carbon credits, some cap and trade thing is not a solution. It's not even maybe putting a Band-Aid on a gunshot wound, right? What can help the earth though is true sustainability, localism, right? So we want to produce as much locally and consume as much locally, and have as much local autonomy in terms of roots and culture. This is what a lot of people, it's hard to get over because we can't always agree with the same things, but it's easier to agree with the same system, like a constitutional republic, for example, in its true sense, right? Which nothing exists in its true sense, but we're just philosophizing here a little bit. Hemp has to become part of this conversation. So they say cannabis is the billion-dollar crop. Hemp is the trillion-dollar crop. So what I'm excited for is actually, with all that, I've been an activist for so long, but now it's time to actually, this God-given super plant, to actually make it a hemp economy. It doesn't mean every fucking thing has to be made out of hemp. I'm not an ideologue, right? You know, we can use flax and other shit too, whatever, right?
Right.
But this whole idea of, you know, you're not going to get, you know, take away packaging necessarily. Can you make packaging better and more biodegradable for the earth? Yeah, you can. So here we are, everyone yipping and yapping about climate change or the fucking environment. But if most people who yip about that shit don't give a shit about, don't really care about it. Because ultimately, when it comes down to it, they care about themselves the most, right? Which is okay, right? Just don't be a hypocrite. So how do we figure out a solution where everyone can still be themselves, you know, maybe try a little bit and care a little bit, right? But don't be a fake martyr, right? You know, you can smell that from a million miles away, right? Let's actually figure out how we're gonna fucking create a sustainable economy, a hemp economy, and get away from, just like Jack Hare said, food, fuel, fiber, medicine, and shelter. And if we're not implementing hemp in medicine, and so if we're not implementing hemp in all those realms, then don't have a conversation with me about, like, what's the guy's name? Kerry, who's the environmental ambassador flying around in his jet talking about how the third world can't live like the first world, right? That dude's got a big ass house and everything, da 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 da. Shut up. Stop talking about it. It's not, of course it's bad. Maybe the solution's bad, or whatever the polarization thing that is, or the contra to him is bad too, right? There's no real solutions out there right now. Nobody's talking. So if anyone's talking food, fuel, fiber, shelter, or medicine, and they're not talking cannabis and whatever, blue, green, algae, or whatever, and they're talking these institutional things, then you're not going to help anything. So I'm so excited about creating hemp technology with hemp batteries and hempcrete and hemp feed for chickens instead of antibiotic, or CBD instead of antibiotics, with hemp seeds. And I want to become a hemp economy. And Jack Hare always told me hemp could save the world and save the planet, and that was his mantra. And I got to tell you, I didn't really believe him. I love weed, and I thought it was going to help a lot, right?
Right.
And Rasta would say it's the healing of the nation, right? Well, hemp is the healing of the nation, and so are all these other, psychedelic plants. And we have to get back. The only thing that's going to save our world is spirit. It's not going to be anything linear. So if we don't have the right spirit, we won't be able to implement the right tools, because everybody's out for self. So me, as a public policy freak, how do we make everybody still get out for self? Because you ain't going to change that, right?
This episode is brought to you by Fat Nugs Magazine, a global perspective of cannabis and stoner culture as a bridge to the rest of the world. Right now, you can join Fat Nugs Magazine, Beard Bros Farms, Freedom Grow, and Jailed for Weed in the upcoming Prisoners Edition, and help spotlight current and past cannabis prisoners and their stories, because no one should be in jail for a plant. Find Fat Nugs Magazine's beautiful print copies at your local dispensary, fatnugsmag.com, and on socials. Cannabis culture welcomes us all.
And still turn it into something. So you always have to show the money and this and that and the other things. But for all the wind, the solar and shit, the people don't understand. Like Tesla figured all this shit a long time ago. There's people that we have the technology. It's being suppressed, and certain industries just come out and push what they push. And then they create a beautiful narrative. And we're sheep, and we believe anything we hear in our newsfeed that day, and think we're good people, and that we're doing something we're not doing shit. You're not doing anything. Nobody's doing nothing, okay? Only people that are doing something are the people that are actually doing something with action to see tangible results for the earth. So I don't want to be too dismissive or discount good people's good work, because of course, good people are doing good work. It's just, we have to bring that voice out more and understand and have a conversation. If you don't agree with someone's politics, like America's so polarized, doesn't matter. Do you think that person's a bad person? Do they treat their kids well? Do they treat their family well? We've got to get back to this America, right? This world, right? Is that we're not going to agree on everything, but I'm not going to hate you because you don't think gays should be able to get married. I'm not. But I would hate you if I saw you beat your child, or if I thought you were just a shitty dad, That's why we should hate people, right? Not because they think, because I'm completely pro-choice. I'm completely pro-gay marriage. Like, I don't give a fuck. I don't see why anyone else would for gay marriage. Abortion's a little bit different issue. But why gay people get married? I just like, people, come on. But then you go around the world and you look at different cultures and you see the difference between city and country, because that's a huge sociological schism.
Oh, yeah.
And so you have to understand what's going on. So how do you communicate with all those folks? Ultimately, we all want the same shit. Ultimately, we're all liberals, actually. We live in a liberal society. So that's, just the word liberal or illiberal, right? Talk to people who live in illiberal societies about our banter and discourse, right? And rhetoric. It's sick. So if we really want to be solution-minded, we have to actually really care and not just spew quick words. And in this social media world we live in, it's so easy. Everybody want to be a rock star, you know what I'm saying? But to be a real rock star, it's fucking Adele, she didn't become a rock star because she had such a great voice. She had a rock star because she had a great voice and she worked her or whoever. Like, you got to work for this shit,
Yeah,
and
you do.
it's not always fun, right? And so I don't like clowns talking about shit where there's really never going to be any solution. They just like hearing their own voice, and everybody, and I'm talking about politicians and administrators. If you're not talking hemp, I mean, Europe's sickening. It's so technocratic here, and they're such fucking idiots. They give money to the European Union only to beg for it back as they divvy it out, right? It's kind of the same thing in America as we see. Whether you like Trump or not, you know that the American government is spending erroneously, right? The question is how do are you going to be reckless like Homeboy is a little bit? Or are you going to be, but you have to be somewhat reckless if you're going to get it done. How do you get that shit done? How do you make true revolution happen? And how is revolution packaged, right? So if it's not packaged with hemp, if Trump doesn't fucking end the 280 and the banking reform, I'm going to be so disappointed. And just think, if he did that, how much people would be like, oh shit,
Yeah.
you just fucking, damn, dude, you actually care about everybody, and actually know that this is not one of your conservative issues you have to die on, right? You can go ahead and stop this prohibition madness. Stop this madness, So if he doesn't do it, that's such bullshit. But I'm not even going to have hope either. You know what I mean? I'm not even going to let myself have hope. But the point is ain't nobody doing nothing if you're not talking about fundamental change. Robert Kennedy is talking about some fundamental change, right? I mean, his position in the health again, however you feel about him, the motherfucker's disruptive as shit, right?
He is. He's very disruptive.
And the fact is our food system is a joke in America, right?
Yeah.
And everything's a joke about our health system, right? So in my mind, it's just like we have to have something snap, because if we don't go back to a hemp economy and local economies, and we go and we get everything trucked in and gassed in, it's like it's not sustainable. And so there's going to be some pain likely, and who knows, because I'll tell you, there's evil forces in the world that just don't give a fuck, right? The average person gives a fuck, It's like Carl Jung, the famous Swiss philosopher. He talks about Western society, or Protestant society even, and I'm just talking about what he says, not how I feel particularly, but that of more modern societies, you've made the devil an abstract concept, right? And as a good postmodernist liberal boy, I've definitely made the devil an abstract concept, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's just normal for us, right? For a lot of, but maybe the devil is not as abstract as we thought. This was back in the day when philosophers from Switzerland in the 50s could invoke what we might think is kooky, woo-woo religious stuff now, right? But back then, the whole Tolkien and Lewis, and one was religious, one's not, and they both respect and they understand, scientific and smart. Oh my God, how could you believe in God? That's crazy, But here we are evoking, then saying, oh, maybe it's not such an abstract concept. So hemp, if you said the botany of desire, what's his name, Michael Pollan?
Yeah.
He'll say hemp has its own consciousness and is good. Well, I think that's true, and I think that hemp it's going to just happen. It's just going to slap us together. It's just that I want to be here. I want to be here. I'm trying to go here. It's like Little Shop of Horrors, except the opposite. It's good when Seymour grows, right? And so
yeah.
And so anyway, I went on a little long about that, but that is the revolution right there. If a hemp-based economy, 100%, if we can start to get down with that, psychedelics, and have true healing in our societies, good food, good water, good vibrations, good air, then we can, but how many governments really think this way? So this is really pie in the sky, but at the same time, I've seen tangible change, and I've seen it happen. And there's things that I thought would never happen. I never thought that the Soviet Union wouldn't be the Soviet Union when I was a kid, right?
Right.
We never, yeah, there's so many things that just you think are just ingrained in society. You know, we never thought the World Trade Center towers would be explode and go down, however that happened, right? You just would never think those things, right? Well, fuck it, anything's possible, and we have to push the hemp. So I'm way in to doing hemp research. I created a consortium in Slovenia with all the major public research institutions, and we're ready to get down. I got one of the baddest battery dudes here who works in Slovenia, and that's my 20-year plan. My early plan is like, okay, let's legalize. I want to make some money in my businesses, but then it's all about pushing everything to the hemp economy.
I think that's awesome. I mean, we've done, and I'm not going to go down another, because I love talking to you. We could talk all day, but it's like, you know, I always mention to people, if we hadn't had prohibition back in the day, because we were looking at, like Jack said, there was, you know, the industry was threatened by hemp. And if we'd actually been able to utilize it industrially, our environment would be a whole different thing right now.
Well, you said it, because that's why hemp was originally criminalized or punitively taxed to make it a non-viable product, is because of the petro-industrial complex,
right?
And the rise of the petro. I mean, he just basically states once they created the hemp decorticator, that was a huge threat, like the cotton gin for hemp,
Right.
that was a huge threat to the petrochemical companies, and nylon had just been invented. I mean, this is basically just directly from his book.
Yeah.
And DuPont was running that shit, and DuPont's son-in-law was Harry Anslinger, and he was some treasury guy, I think a treasury guy, and then he was the one that pushed the Cannabis Marijuana Tax Act through, and then of course the propaganda campaign and everything. Before then, the states could decide, and it was illegal already in like a few states, like New Mexico or something like that. It was you know,
Yeah, I
the
can't
states,
remember,
they
but
let the states decide. And then he was like, okay, federal. And then of course they then mandated farmers to grow hemp in World War II, hemp for victory.
Yep.
As we know. But that's right. That's exactly why it happened. And so now, you know, what's past is clearly prologue. You know, now it's if we look at what the petrochemical complex is now, it's yeah. So that's why it's really pie in the sky to be talking this stuff. But you have to talk about it. You have to start making movement happen. Do the research. Get it out there. And it is happening. You know, it is happening. Hemp is. It's been kind of the curves like this, and it's popped a little bit, and it's starting to go a little more vertical. And it's not, you know, the CBD movement slowed down the hemp movement, actually, right? So when CBD became the big thing, that actually set hemp back, right? Because the hemp innovation back, because now everyone's growing their hemp crop for oil, right? And it wasn't like, oh, now we're going to grow hemp and we're going to then take the combines through it and we're going to make food, fuel, fiber, and shelter out of it. Really, all you saw was the shelter, not much fiber and all this stuff. So not much plastics, although it's happening. You know, we know they're in the BMW, and it's happening. But and there's other plants that are besides hemp. I don't want to just get stuck on hemp either, because there's other magic plants out there. So the whole idea is just to get into a magic plant area, is not to have, it's just to be thinking preventative. And with all the plastics in us and all this stuff, it's a bad, all the autism, all the diabetes, all the everything. We need good leaders who are going to actually tell people, hey, you know, you gotta take care of yourself. You know, you gotta eat well, you gotta sleep well, you gotta try to have an occupation that's not going to kill you, and you gotta you know, be into your community. I'm not a Christian or anything, but like a lot of my relatives from Illinois and the Midwest, they're Christians. And they're some of the nicest, wonderful, most pious people that I know. Like, they take care of their community. They go to church. They feed the homeless. They're there. They're in, you know, so I don't know. I just think that it is a spiritual, like I said, I'm not a Christian, but I do believe it's a spirit revolution. Again, I'll go back to that. And hemp is tied to that. It has its own brain, its own consciousness. So do all the other psychedelics. And it's like a good little shop of horrors, everything seeping in. But we want to really put emphasis on revolution, right? You don't have to be a martyr to be a revolutionary. You just have to do good work and think right. And it doesn't mean because you bought a Tesla or you're fucking recycling that you're doing shit for the world, right? You have to go on. And it doesn't mean you have to be the biggest environmental savior either. It's a spirit thing. You have to go with spirit. If you're too rigid, things will snap, right? So it's all about creating new institutions where opinions can get filtered through, and then come out with really great outcomes. And that's all based on systems, and then the spirit of that you work in. And I think it comes with love and understanding, and that's what we have way too little compassion and empathy and love and understanding. So if we've lost our connection with humans and compassion, and we're so out for self, then we're lost. Nothing matters, right? It's like talking politics in America. Well, for $40 trillion in debt, I'm pretty sure nothing's going to matter. I think we're pretty much fucked. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it's like Isaac Asimov. Are you going to save the universe? Is the universe going to go into chaos for 10,000 years? Or is it going to go into chaos for 1,000 years? It's going to go into chaos, but you can limit the amount of chaos that it goes into. So we're in for some shocking spiritual pain, I believe. But all anyone can do is just live their best life and take care of their friends and family. You don't have to give to charity. Your charity is your friends and your family and your community, right? Don't go and give to a charity in some faraway land. You got enough problems right where you're at with your friends, your family, and community. And if everyone just went inward a little bit, right, instead of a little bit outward and thinking they were, that's just, you could have change pretty quickly. But that can only happen with divine intervention. And like I said, I'm not a Christian. I'm labeling it divine, just saying that the unknown, something that, or deep in our psyche or in our historical memory, that we have to remember who we are, why we're here. And I just think hemp is such a major, and weed is just such a huge part. And not everyone has to smoke weed or whatever, but you have to understand that there's this magic realm out there. And people who do psychedelics understand that there is a magic realm out there. And we have to be able to spread that and show people that there's interdimensional shit going on. It's scary. Life's scary. There's all this pain and suffering we have to deal with. We just have to be there for each other, and we can't be presumptuous. We all are a mirror of each other, and it doesn't matter how the fuck you think. If you don't think exactly like a person, it's actually a good thing, because think how boring life would be.
Oh, we need all the lenses. All the lenses. And I gotta
bring it on.
Thank you for shaking shit up and also creating a space for change. Because if we don't have people like you out there, putting yourselves out there, creating these spaces and creating this food for thought and valuing the lenses, we don't have a lot. So for people who want to attend ICBC, learn more about what you're doing, how do they do that?
Just go to internationalcbc.com. I don't even know our social handles. I should. I got my media team handling that.
We'll have it on social media. We'll put it up.
Okay, cool. That's great. But yeah, we're going to have about 4,000 people April 28th, 29th, 29th and 30th. In Berlin, it'll be the biggest B2B ever in the Eastern Hemisphere for cannabis. And probably hundreds of millions of dollars of business is going to get done, if not more. And what is absolutely great, and what I'm most proud of about the ICBC, is it's people from over 80 countries. So it is savagely a diverse show in terms of everyone you meet is from a different country. So next thing you know, you're talking with some cat from fucking Russia who's doing hemp in Siberia or something. Or next thing you know, you're talking with some cat from Lesotho who has a LP in Lesotho and is importing already into Germany and or got their GMP license, right? Or you'll meet someone from Colombia, Uruguay, Argentina, Australia, New Zealand, South Africa. They're all there. And of course, every country in Europe is represented. So for me, I just think it's just a great show, because it can't be a shit show because the attendees, quality attendee is just so high.
Yeah.
You were at Barcelona. It was a smaller one, but it was anything but a shit show. It was just fucking teaming, networking,
so
good
many
vibes.
fascinating people to connect with. And just that, not only sharing information, but just communing together was so incredibly impactful.
Communing together. That's what we do, and that's the vibe. So we're going to have 5 or 6 times more people in Berlin than we had in Barcelona. We have almost 200 exhibitors from all around the world. We have like 100,000 square feet of expo space. And we're just ready to rock and roll and have a great, 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 great time. And one of the coolest things is we have a consumption lounge this year. Weed's legal in Germany, so you can smoke on the street as long as you're not near a school. Basically, you can smoke on the street. So it's kind of crazy because even in the American states, we can't really smoke on the street. I mean, we do, right? But really, technically, you can't. So you can't just be blowing it up everywhere. Here in Germany, you smoke weed anywhere, right? So Germany is now the freest place in the world for cannabis, with that caveat, aforementioned caveat in mind.
Yeah. Wow, the world has changed so much.
I know you're not going to get to make this one, but next year, I know you're coming to next year's show.
Oh, I will be there next year, and I can't wait to hear how this year goes. I'm so excited for you.
Yeah, thanks. Well, we're blowing it up. We're taking shit to the next level, and we are bringing the revolution right here in Europe. No question.
I love it. Thank you, my friend. And will you come back?
Hey, whenever you need me, I'm here. Okay. Thank you so much, Sarah. I really appreciate you and everything you do. You're the bomb, and you're one of the best out there doing what they do. And I really real honor being on your show. And thanks for letting me talk all my crazy shit, because a lot of times I come on here and I'm not here to like promote my business so much. I'm here to promote just the cipher, as we would say. And it's always about the ciphers, and you keep the cipher alive, sister. And I appreciate it.
Thank you. It's a pleasure talking with you. You have so much to share. And I know that our listeners have a lot of food for thought. So until next time, my friend.
All right. Thanks so much. Peace there. Peace.
And everyone, remember, if you like listening, please give us a review, share it with a friend. Let us know what your favorite episodes are. And if you'd like to stay in touch over social media, we are Planted with Sara Pion on Facebook and Planted with Sara on Instagram and Twitter. You can also go to our website, www.plantedwithsara.com, or listen to us on our parent network, Radio Misfits Network, where there are other great podcasts, like one of my favorites, the Winemakers Podcast. So check it out. You can listen to Planted wherever you listen to your favorite podcast, whether that's Pandora, Spotify, Amazon, Google, Apple, Stitcher, TuneIn. We are there. So join us. And until next time, stay curious, stay safe, and remember, it's a wild world out there. Be good to one another. Until next time, take care.